What's going on, everybody? Simple back at it like I'm checking my height. Today we are checking out Nick Crowley's The Unknown YouTube Killer. If you guys enjoy this, make sure you head on over to his channel and show him some support. And as always, if you want to get your requests up here, check out the Google form down in the description below. And definitely make sure you guys hit up the Creator Consortium. Alright, let's check it out.
American scientist who went missing in Greece last week.
It was the 20th of May, 1941. Nazi soldiers would take to the air to partake in a mission known as Operation Mercury. It was the start of what we know today as the Battle of Crete. And after nearly 12 days of bloodshed and thousands of deaths, Germany would eventually emerge victorious as they claimed the Greek island as their own. Flash forward nearly 80 years, and little trace of this dark historical moment remains, other than a few fortresses and bunkers on the island of Crete, left abandoned, decayed, and forgotten. But on the 9th of July, 2019, unbeknownst to a pair of amateur explorers, one of these forgotten Nazi bunkers would prove to have a single inhabitant. As they entered the unrecognizable structure, the two would peer down its ventilation drain just a few hundred feet into their journey, where they would find a woman left bloodied on its floor. She had been dead for days. The subsequent events that both followed and led to this single moment have made for one of Greece's most disturbing cases in recent memory, a case that features a bizarre connection to YouTube, as the man responsible for it all was an active user on the site, and his videos would quite literally take us right to the scene of the crime.
Whoa, what the hell? This is the type of stuff we need to be crawling YouTube. Every time you guys get caught in your little YouTube holes and stuff like that, this is the type of holes we should be trying to get caught into, trying to figure out all these weird people using the platform for stupid shit. Like, how can people like that be allowed on this platform? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't make sense that it wouldn't be policed stronger. But I can't light a cigarette without getting a warning email from YouTube talking about... Okay. But you're allowed to do this shit. Like, I'm just saying, you should see some of the shit that's posted. Go look up some of the ASMR
July
videos.
2nd, 2019, a conference is being held at the Orthodox Academy of Crete
If I had a set
in the
of
Greek
tits, I'd be
town of
rich.
Hania. The event would last for days and had a focus on the study of molecular biology, attracting some of the brightest minds in the field to that area, with one of which being 59-year-old Suzanne Eaton. Suzanne was an award-winning American scientist who was no stranger to these types of conventions. In fact, she had visited Crete 3 times prior for similar business, and by this point she had come to know the area fairly well, and she enjoyed the island and the convention alike, as the event gave her the opportunity to meet with like-minded individuals. And on that second day of July, she was having nothing short of a great time. In the lobby of the academy, Suzanne would sit at its public piano, where she began playing music for her colleagues around her. She smiled, laughed, and even sang along with the tune she was playing. And as her final song ended and she played her last note, she would say goodbye to her colleagues briefly, as she had planned on meeting up with them again shortly, before leaving the lobby, heading in the direction of her hotel room. This would be the last time her friends would ever see Suzanne again. As that day came to an end and the next began, Suzanne's friends would notice that she had been absent now for nearly 24 hours, something that prompted them to contact authorities in the area, as being late and absent just wasn't like Suzanne. Crete police would open her hotel room to discover that there was no sign of the now missing lady. And not only that, but everything in her hotel room seemed to have been in perfect order, and only 2 items were missing: her running shoes and her running shirt. Despite being 59 years old, Suzanne was incredibly fit and would go on long runs daily. Given this, and the fact that her running gear was now nowhere to be found, it immediately became obvious that Suzanne had left the hotel to go on a run that evening on July 2nd. And given that she had not been seen since, it was assumed that somewhere along the way, Suzanne had vanished. This idea would later be backed up by testimony from both a local farmer and a local fisherman, with one stating that she was walking quickly behind a bridge and a chapel on the street outside the village. It was a troubling sign, as the area that Suzanne had last been seen running in was on the outskirts of the town and considered fairly desolate. She didn't know anyone in the area, and to make matters worse, the weather was described as being sweltering during that time, and prolonged exposure to the heat would have easily become deadly. Given what authorities knew at the time, it seemed most likely that after leaving the hotel for a run, Suzanne had either gotten lost or had gotten injured and was somewhere in need of help. This is something that her own two sons were adamant about as well, as they had even flown to the area that very next day that she was reported missing, and they started performing their own search for their mother. They believed that somewhere out there, their mother was in desperate need of help, and if they didn't find her soon, well, she likely wouldn't survive. However, in reality, at this point, Suzanne Eaton was already dead, and she had been for days. On the 9th of July, two explorers would enter an abandoned Nazi bunker, fully aware that Suzanne had gone missing in the nearby area. As they approached, they would notice that the entrance was sealed off by a wooden pallet, as well as thick brush. Perhaps Suzanne had sought shelter in there and was waiting for help, they thought, but that was wishful thinking. Nearly 200 feet into the bunker, the two would peer into its ventilation drain, where they would see the body of Suzanne Eaton laying lifelessly. She had been dead since the night of her disappearance, and even at a glance...
That's crazy, though. Like, you're just walking around, exploring. I mean, you have an inclination that it could potentially be this place, I guess, especially if you know of it. I'm sure there's people that know of it, but how many people really go there, right? Like, that's so messed up.
Lifelessly. She had been dead since the night of her disappearance. And even at a glance, one thing was painfully obvious, that however Suzanne had died, it was no accident. Suzanne's face was bloodied and broken in multiple areas. Her ribs were cracked, and her hands had both been badly damaged. Scattered throughout her body were multiple stab wounds as well, and bruises that implied she had been beaten. Suzanne Eaton had been brutally murdered. In an instant, the case surrounding Suzanne had gone from missing persons to murder, leaving the big question, who could have done this? Upon investigating the scene, police would notice a set of tire marks leading directly to the entrance of the bunker, which was noteworthy considering Suzanne's footprints were not found leading to the cave, meaning that she hadn't walked in there by herself, and instead was likely dumped there, potentially as a means of hiding her body. Also, this bunker in particular was practically unknown and was only visited on the rarest of occasion, and given that there was no other trail leading to its entrance, it would be assumed that whoever had driven that car likely had their hand in Suzanne's death.
See, now
Police would analyze the tire marks and eventually match them to a car that had been seen driving through the area. On the very same day that Suzanne had gone missing, it had even been caught on CCTV footage heading in the direction of the bunker. The car was owned by 27-year-old Yanis Parakiskas, a happily married farmer and father of 2 young children. And looking from the outside in, he seemed like a fairly normal guy. And when questioned initially, he was adamant about the fact that he had nothing to do with Suzanne's death, claiming that it must have been a coincidence about his car, and that he wasn't even aware of where that particular bunker was. But Yanis
what, do you know other bunkers in the area there, bub? I don't know where that particular bunker is. I know some other ones, but not that one.
Of where that particular bunker was. But Yanis had made one critical error in his story, an error that all stemmed from the fact that Yanis, at one point in time, had been actively trying to become a YouTuber. It may not seem like much, but this is a video of Yanis performing Qigong, a form of martial arts, in his backyard. He would post the video along with 2 others, featuring similar performances to his YouTube channel, all of which being posted on January 3rd, 2012, where initially very few would see it. And from this perspective, one could say that these 3 videos are fairly inconsequential to this story, and therefore the channel as a whole is as well, given how barren it all seems. But this wasn't always the case. In the years prior to Suzanne's disappearance, Giannis was extremely active on his channel, posting videos of himself hanging out with friends, shooting guns, and playing with wild animals. The videos were honestly nothing special, but it was obvious that he had put time and effort into making them, even at one point posting a sketch video that would feature music, intros, and transitions. It had been no secret to those who knew Giannis that he was actively trying to gain a following on his channel, with the hopes of one day becoming a YouTuber. As we know now, this would never happen, as to this day his channel stands with only 22 subscribers, and before his arrest he would go through and delete the vast majority of his uploads, and as it turns out, he had good reason to do so. Throughout his time on the site, Giannis's most frequently uploaded content was his exploration series, where he would visit creepy areas around the island of Crete. And out of all the
I don't know
locations
that
he would film
particular
at,
cave.
his most frequent
Ha!
and his favorite was the very bunker where Suzanne's body was found.
Go
As
figure.
recent as 2016,
Go
Giannis had been
figure.
posting videos of him exploring the abandoned Nazi bunker, filming it in a vlog-style format with him and his friends. He would even mention how the cave was in close proximity to his home, and that he would visit it regularly. Adding to the strangeness of it all, that particular bunker was quite literally unknown by even those who lived nearby, and those who did know of it would rarely, if ever, visit, given that it was quite simply nothing special. Giannis was one of very few who had ever entered that bunker, and he just so happened to have driven right up to it around the time that Suzanne had been killed. And with that
Dumb.
note, he was practically caught red-handed. And when
Like
confronted
how-
with the overwhelming evidence against him, he would crack and tell authorities what really happened. While out on a drive, Giannis would happen across Suzanne jogging alongside of the road. And the mere sight of her, for whatever reason, had triggered something within him, and in an instant, he would snap.
So what's that? That must have been his cop-out. Like, I just saw her and snapped. People are so stupid. Like people that give excuses like that. Like, just tell them, you're a freaking weirdo. Like, if more people would just come to terms with the fact that they are fucking weirdos, I think this place could be a lot better, right? Because then at least we wouldn't have to be like, are you the one that's going to try to stab me on the train? Like, you can't even be in LA or other major, even New York. Get on the subway in like Lowell, Mass. You better be looking around, because as soon as you're not and you look susceptible to somebody coming and doing something to you, that's when it happens. Like, and that's the thing. It's like that around the world. It is like.
For whatever reason, had triggered something within him, and in an instant, he would snap. There was nothing particular that Suzanne did or didn't do. In fact, Giannis would later say,
There should be
"I would
no
do
life
this to
sentence
anyone
for
I
people
met in
like
front
that."
of me at that moment."
Yeah, you
With his
should
mind made
probably
up,
be
he
put
would
to death.
step on the gas and accelerate directly into Suzanne, striking her violently. As she laid there in shock, Giannis would back up his vehicle slowly before punching the gas yet again, this time striking her directly in her face. From there, he would exit his vehicle and proceed to assault her violently, even stabbing her multiple times throughout her body. He then picked her up and threw her in his trunk, where, though badly injured, Suzanne was still very much alive. Giannis would then drive Suzanne to the abandoned bunker, where he would proceed to assault her even more in ways too disturbing to discuss, and he did this over and over again. Inside the bunker, Giannis would toss Suzanne in its drain, leaving her to die. Injured and unable
What
to breathe,
the
she
hell?
would suffocate to death alone. As Giannis left, he would seal the cave's entrance with a wooden pallet, and then proceed to drive to a cemetery, where he would clean out the trunk of his car. Once satisfied with the result, he would then drive home to his wife and children.
What fucking cemetery are you driving to clean your car out? And the other question is, why do you have cemeteries where you can clean your cars out? You know, police that, maybe look around the cemeteries in the middle of the night? Because I know you can't go to a city around my area without the cops probably being like, what the hell are you doing in the cemetery in the middle of the night, you weirdo? Like, that's not a place. This is why I want to live underground.
of his car. Once satisfied with the result, he would then drive home to his wife and children as if nothing had happened. Just a few years prior, Giannis was vlogging that very bunker where on that fateful night he would leave Suzanne Eaton to die in what coroners described as a slow and brutal death. Loved ones of the man
Hold on.
very bunker.
Hold on.
Just a few years prior, Giannis was vlogging that very bunker
Okay.
where on that fateful night he would leave Suzanne Eaton to die in what coroners described as a slow and brutal death.
I thought he went and
Loved
looked
ones
at
of
the
the man
bunker
were
the night.
shocked
I
as
was gonna
his
say,
confession
damn.
would later be proven as accurate, given blood found where Suzanne was struck, as well as in the back of Giannis's car. He would try and claim that a demon had told him to do it, and that he was
I hate people like that. Like, I can honestly say with all 100% heart and soul, I hate people like that. A demon made me do it. Okay. Next they're gonna say he's schizophrenic, right?
of Giannis's car. He would try and claim that a demon had told him to do it, and that he was possessed in that moment, but it was no use. Giannis was a guilty man, and the courts
Yeah.
would give him life in prison
Should have been
without
death.
parole. According to reports from his
shouldn't-
family, Giannis was a funny, kind-hearted
People like that shouldn't have life anymore. There's no reason for it. Like, what's the point? What's the point? Let's just forget about it. Instead of dwelling on all of this shit that happens and spending all of this money on somebody that doesn't fucking matter, just eliminate them. It's so much easier. Maybe people will stop doing such dumb shit if they knew that the consequence was so horrendous.
guy.
I'm just
and their
saying,
testimony might make
like,
one believe that this was just a man
can
who,
never
for
understand why
whatever
they give you
reason,
life in
snapped,
frickin'
as he had
prison.
shown no
So
signs
stupid.
that he would ever be capable of doing such a thing. However, I have my doubts. To start, we know that Giannis had been previously arrested twice, once for arson and the other time for torturing and killing animals. No further details were provided for either of these cases, but these types of charges are literally some of the biggest red flags for future serial killers. And not only
I mean, that's
this, but
definitely
there
what
was
they
also
say
a
for
dark
sure.
clue hidden within his YouTube channel. This video was the proverbial nail in the coffin for Giannis, as it provided proof that he had frequented that hidden bunker. But what I failed to show you was its most infamous moment.
Is it bones? How many other people?
As Giannis explores the same spot that he had killed Suzanne, he would show the viewers bones that were scattered throughout the floor, with some of which appearing to be very human-like. This video was posted back in 2016, 3 whole years before Suzanne had been killed. But given the fact that no one really knew of this bunker, the sight of these bones is genuinely concerning. And it doesn't stop there, as in this same video, you can hear one of his friends talk in the background for a brief moment. And translated to English, he supposedly says, "Is this where you left that old guy?" It's perhaps the most chilling detail of this whole case, the fact that there were bones there in the first place, and the offhand
There was a lot of things that floated around the internet in the early days, and I'm sure they're still out there. I would have no doubt in my mind. I'm just saying. Things like Two Guys, One Hammer. That took place in Russia. Like,
comment made by his friend almost
Three guys or
insinuates
whatever it
that
was
Giannis
called.
had killed
Like-
before. However, these bones have never been recovered and were likely removed from the cave at some point after
Posted
the video
online,
aired,
too.
and whatever or whoever they belong to is still unknown to this
What
day.
the hell's there a ribbon doing around that one?
So is it possible that Suzanne wasn't Giannis's first victim, and that he may actually be a serial killer? In my opinion, I would say yes, and at this
Yes,
point it's
I
starting
would
to
agree.
become more than a hunch. It would later be revealed that Giannis had 2 similar run-ins with the police prior to Suzanne's death. In both cases, victims had come forward claiming that Giannis had attempted to kill them, specifically stating that he tried to run them down with his car as they walked alongside the road. For whatever reason, both cases were thrown out. And
Meh.
looking back on that note today, it's pretty frightening to think about, especially considering that they weren't the only 2 to come forward.
And that's what happens all around the whole world. They're like, oh, you almost got run down by some maniac in a car. It's okay, we're going to let him go. Oh, it just happened again? Yeah, no worries, it's okay, we're going to let him go. See, we have to wait until they actually murder someone in order to do anything about it. The form of population control? Like, what the hell's going
After
on here?
Giannis's arrest,
So much for
5
protection.
other female victims would take the stand.
There's so many
claiming
other
that
things
Giannis
that
had attempted to run them down as well.
people in
a tactic
authority
that
do
he admitted to doing to Suzanne
instead of
in order
protecting
to
the public
immobilize her
like they're
and
hired
kill her
for.
with ease.
Like-
And in the majority of these stories, these women were actually struck by his car, where he would then proceed to get out and pursue them further, with one woman alleging that Giannis
Sick wing, bro.
would then proceed to get out and pursue them further, with
That
one
was dude's
woman
car?
alleging that Giannis had actually caught her and grabbed her by the neck. Luckily, in all of these other cases, there were joggers in the nearby area who had heard the screams and ran over to help. But had there been no one around, one could only imagine what Giannis would have done to these women. And to call these simple allegations
That's
at
crazy.
this point isn't even close to being accurate, as Giannis had actually admitted to doing this to law enforcement. As one article writes, the man had admitted to police that he would hit women he liked with his car. So all in all,
Huh. So is it a breakdown in mental health? Is it a breakdown in your police force? Is it a breakdown in people giving a flying fuck when it comes to anything aside from themselves? I think it's a little bit of all 3. The man admitted to police that he would hit women he liked with his car. Why does that have like a 4th, 5th grade vibe? You know what I mean? Boys pick on girls, or girls would pick on boys, and they liked them. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I get that we're all equal and we're all one, but at some point you have to weed out the bad ones. Why don't we do that? Like, what? I've never understood the problem. Like, if you're not willing to get along with society and be civil, you have to run women down that you like with your car. I don't think you have a place on this planet. That's just my opinion. Like, you should be dealt with. That's a problem. This is a problem. And life in prison isn't the answer, because it just sucks the money out of the people's pockets who could be putting it back into their own country, but instead have to pay for your dumbass to sit in prison for the rest of your life. Like, we should choose to be able to pay for those things. We shouldn't be forced to. That shouldn't be something that we have to pay for.
had admitted to police that he would hit women he liked with his car. So all in all, Giannis had run down, or attempted to run down, 8 women.
people like
and of
this
that
have
group,
no place
only
in
one
this
would
world in
actually
my
be
eyes.
further assaulted
I
and
just-
killed,
I
as the
can't see
others
it.
had managed to
I
escape.
can't see it.
Meaning that of the victims we know, 88% of them had escaped. To me, this number
Thank
is
God.
shockingly high, considering how unlikely it would be to survive an attack of this style. I mean, he is literally running these women over, and then getting out of his car to attack them further. It's a cowardly style of attack, where he should have all the power, and you'd think that the chances of even one of these women surviving would have been very low. Plus, he had knowledge of vast, endless cave systems and bunkers in the region that hardly anyone knows about, the perfect places to hide a body. Given this, and Giannis's prior videos in the bunker, I'm left to wonder if perhaps he had killed before. And I wouldn't be surprised
his
if
buddy
one
asked him if
day
that's where
some
he
other
left the
cave
old guy.
explorers just happened to stumble upon the body of another one of Giannis's victims. I want to give a big shout out to my gold tier patrons and my god tier patrons: Carlton
Hell yeah.
Calendar, Donovan Aaron, Just Ali, Lacey, Mark PH, Nathan Backus, Quinn Kiwi, Raven the Nightwing, Roberto Rabito, Sam Lutfi, Skelly, Sub to Micro O, The Deck of Cards, Tracy Volpe, and Unblended Korchnoi.
And a special shout out to Nick Crowley for allowing us to use his content. Seriously, I appreciate it. If you guys enjoy this, make sure you head on over to his channel. Definitely show him some support. Make sure you check out one of the other current videos floating around. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.